The warning sirens screamed through every ship in the Coalition Armada. Commander Jae-sung Kim stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride, watching the tactical display with cold eyes. Red dots filled the screen like angry stars. Each dot was a Vorthak warship. Each warship carried enough firepower to crack a planet. There were too many of them. "Sir, enemy fleet count is now at 800 ships," Lieutenant Hai-jin Park reported from her station. Her voice stayed steady, but Jae-sung could see the fear in her shoulders. "They have us surrounded on 3 sides. Behind them lay the Kepler Nebula. Space there twisted and bent like broken glass. Ships that entered the nebula's heart never came out. The gravity wells shifted without warning. Reality itself seemed to break down in those swirling clouds of gas and dark matter. Jae-sung had studied every report about the nebula. In 300 years, no ship had successfully traveled through its core. The lucky ones got torn apart. Quickly, the unlucky ones drifted forever in pockets where time moved differently. "Coalition Command, this is Captain Veltar of the hegemony ship Brightsword." The alien's voice crackled over the communication system. His people looked like tall gray birds, and they thought like birds too, always planning, always careful. "We must begin immediate retreat to the outer rim. We can save perhaps 10% of our ships." "Negative, Brightsword." Admiral Crix's voice was like grinding metal. "The Centauri were tough, with thick blue skin and 4 arms. They never backed down from a fight." "We hold the line here. Every ship we lose in retreat weakens the next defensive position." Jae-sung listened to the argument with half his attention. The other half focused on the nebula readings. His fingers moved across the display, calling up gravitational maps and sensor data. Most of it was useless. The nebula changed too fast for accurate mapping, but there were patterns. Hidden deep in the chaos, mathematical relationships that most people missed. Jae-sung had always been good at seeing patterns. It was what made him dangerous in space combat. "Human ship Seoul's Pride, what is your recommendation?" Admiral Crix asked. The question surprised everyone. Humans were new to the Coalition. Most alien species still saw them as wild and unpredictable. Jae-sung stepped forward to his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew waited. They trusted him completely. It was both a gift and a terrible weight. "I recommend we go through the nebula," he said quietly. The communication channels went silent. Then everyone started talking at once. "Impossible," Captain Veltar squawked. "The nebula core is a death trap. No ship survives passage." "The human has lost his mind." Another voice added. "This is why we should not trust their species with command positions." Jae-sung waited for the noise to die down. Then he transmitted his tactical analysis to every ship in the fleet. Numbers and projections filled their screens. Mathematical models showing gravitational flows and energy patterns. "The Vorthak expect us to retreat or fight," he explained. "They do not expect us to dive into the nebula. Look at my calculations. There is a path through the core. It requires perfect timing and absolute precision, but it exists." "Your calculations are based on theoretical models," Captain Veltar argued. "No one has real data from inside the nebula core." "That is correct," Jae-sung admitted. "But our other options lead to certain death. The Vorthak fleet is too large. We cannot fight them and win. We cannot outrun them in normal space. The nebula is our only chance." On his tactical display, the enemy ships were moving closer, red dots creeping toward the Coalition fleet like a closing fist. In 6 hours, they would be in weapons range. In 7 hours, the battle would begin. In 8 hours, most of the Coalition ships would be debris floating in space. "Even if your path exists," Admiral Crix said slowly, "how do we navigate it? Our sensors will be blind in there." Jae-sung took a deep breath. This was the hardest part to explain. "You follow me. I will lead the way through." The silence that followed was different from before. It was the silence of people trying to understand something impossible. "You want us to fly blind through the most dangerous region of space," Captain Veltar said, "following one human ship, based on your feeling that a path exists." "Not feeling," Jae-sung corrected. "Pattern recognition. Humans are good at seeing patterns in chaos. It is how we survived on our world for so long." Lieutenant Hye-jin looked up from her station. "Sir, I have been running additional calculations based on your models. The path is mathematically possible, but the margin for error is almost zero." "How close to zero?" Admiral Crix asked. "Any ship that deviates more than 50 meters from the lead trajectory will be destroyed," Hye-jin replied. "Any delay longer than 3 seconds in following course corrections will be fatal." The communication channels filled with worried voices. Ship captains talking to their crews. Admirals conferring with their staffs. The coalition was made up of 12 different species. Each species had its own way of making decisions. Some voted. Some followed rigid hierarchies. Some meditated until they reached consensus. But they were running out of time. "I cannot ask my people to follow this madness," Captain Veltar announced. "We will attempt to break through the Vorthak line at grid 77. "And I cannot ask mine to run," Admiral Crix replied. "We will hold position and fight." Jae-sung watched the fleet begin to divide. Some ships moved toward Veltar's position, preparing for a desperate charge. Others formed up around Admiral Crix, ready to sell their lives dearly. But other ships stayed in position, waiting. "Soul's Pride, this is Captain Kor of the Altaran vessel Singing Wind," came a new voice. The Altarans were peaceful by nature, more like floating jellyfish than warriors. "We will follow your path." Heavy cruiser, Titan's Hammer requesting, "Permission to join formation," added another captain. "We trust human tactical doctrine." One by one, more ships declared their intention to follow. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough to matter. Ships from 6 different species, representing half the surviving coalition fleet. Jae-sung felt the weight of their trust settling on his shoulders. Thousands of lives depending on his calculations, depending on his ability to see patterns where others saw only death. "All ships following Soul's Pride form up in single file," he ordered. "Maintain exact distance of 200 meters. When we enter the nebula, you will follow my every course correction without question or delay. Trust in nothing but my commands." He looked around his bridge. His crew was ready. Hye-jin at navigation, preparing to relay his orders to the following ships. Engineer Dong-hyun monitoring the engines, ready to push them beyond normal limits. Weapons Officer Taewon keeping the defensive systems ready for whatever they might face. "Sir," Hye-jin said quietly, "the Vorthak have detected our formation change. They are moving to intercept." Jae-sung nodded. "Then we go now. All ships, follow me into the nebula. Stay close. Trust me." Soul's Pride turned toward the swirling wall of gas and twisted space. Behind it, 43 ships from 6 species followed. They flew toward certain death or impossible salvation. As they approached the nebula's edge, Jae-sung opened a final communication to the fleet. "I told you to trust me before this leap," he said. "Now we find out if that trust was misplaced." The first wisps of nebula gas began to wash over their hulls. Sensors started failing. Reality began to bend. The leap into the unknown had begun. The moment Soul's Pride crossed into the Kepler Nebula, every instrument on the bridge went insane. Warning lights flashed red and yellow. The gravity detector spun like a broken compass. The navigation computer started showing impossible readings, claiming they were somehow moving backward and forward at the same time. "Sensors are completely blind, sir," Lieutenant Hye-jin Park reported. She kept her voice calm, but her hands shook as she tried to make sense of the readings. "I cannot tell which way is up." Commander Jae-sung Kim felt the ship shake around him. Not from enemy fire, but from the nebula itself. Space-time bent and twisted here like a broken mirror. Through the main view screen, he could see swirling clouds of gas that changed color without warning. Purple became green, became silver, became nothing at all. "Engine room, report," Jae-sung called into his communicator. "Engines are stable for now," came the voice of Chief Engineer Dong-hyun Lee. "But the power readings are jumping all over. It is like something is pulling energy right out of the plasma conduits." Behind Seoul's Pride, 43 ships followed in a long line. Each one stayed exactly 200 meters from the ship in front of it. Any closer, and they might collide. Any farther, and they might lose the formation in the swirling chaos. Jae-sung closed his eyes and tried to feel the patterns around them. The nebula was not random. Nothing in the universe was truly random. There were currents here, flows of gravity, and energy that followed rules. He just had to find those rules before the nebula killed them all. "Hard to port 15 degrees, he ordered suddenly. Yi-jin relayed the command to the following ships. "All vessels, follow lead ship. Hard to port 15 degrees. The formation turned as one. Through the nebula gas, Jae-sung could barely see the outline of the Alteran ship Singing Wind. Captain Kor was keeping perfect formation despite flying, blind. Then space around them began to scream. A gravity well opened up directly ahead, invisible but deadly. Jae-sung felt it in his bones before any instrument could detect it. The nebula was trying to tear them apart at the atomic level. "Emergency dive 60 degrees down," he shouted. The formation dove. Some ships were faster than others. The heavy cruiser Titan's Hammer, built by the tough Centauri, dropped like a stone. The delicate hegemony destroyer Swift Arrow struggled to change direction quickly enough. Too slowly, Jae-sung watched in horror as Swift Arrow fell behind by just 10 meters, then 20. Then the gravity well caught it. The ship stretched like rubber. Its hull bent in ways that metal was never meant to bend. For a moment it looked like it might survive, might pull free from the invisible force trying to crush it. Then, Swift Arrow came apart, not with an explosion, but with a terrible silence. The pieces drifted away into the nebula, swallowed by the swirling gas. 27 crew members gone in 3 seconds. Jae-sung felt each death like a weight on his chest. But he could not stop, could not even slow down to help the survivors. In the nebula, stopping meant death for everyone. "Continue formation," he ordered, his voice steady despite the pain. "All ships maintain position." The remaining 42 ships pressed on. They flew through regions where time moved differently. Past Titan's Hammer, Jae-sung could see the crew moving in slow motion, their actions taking forever to complete. But on his own ship, everything moved at normal speed. The nebula was playing games with reality itself. "Sir, I am picking up something on long-range sensors," Yi-jin reported. "Very faint, but it looks like ships." Jae-sung felt his stomach drop. "Vorthak?" Checking now. Hai-jin worked frantically at her station. "Yes, sir. 3 Vorthak hunter ships. They followed us into the nebula." Of course they had. The Vorthak were not afraid of anything. They probably thought the nebula would do their work for them, breaking up the coalition formation so they could pick off individual ships. They were wrong. "New course," Jae-sung announced. "We go deeper." Even Hai-jin looked shocked. "Sir, deeper into the nebula means stronger gravity distortions. The mathematical models suggest that survival probability drops to less than 5%. The Vorthak models suggest the same thing," Jae-sung replied. "They will not follow us into the deep core, and if we stay in the outer regions, they will hunt us one by one." He opened communications to the entire formation. "All ships, we are going deeper into the nebula. The next 30 minutes will determine if we live or die. Trust your lead ship. Trust each other. Do not hesitate. Do not question orders. Just follow." The formation dove deeper into the nebula's heart. Here, The gas clouds were so thick that ships only 50 meters away became invisible. Navigation became pure instinct. Jae-sung felt the flow of gravitational currents around them, sensed the patterns in the chaos. "Sharp turn to starboard," he ordered. "Now climb 70 degrees." The ships turned and climbed. Behind them, the 3 Vorthak hunters tried to follow, but they were too big, too slow to change direction quickly. The first hunter tried to match Soul's pride turn for turn. It fell into a gravity pocket and was crushed like an empty can. The second hunter tried to anticipate Jae-sung's moves. It guessed wrong and flew straight into a spatial distortion. The ship aged 1,000 years in 10 seconds, crumbling to dust. The third hunter was smarter. It stopped trying to follow the formation and instead waited at the nebula's edge, hoping to catch them when they came out. If they came out. Hours passed. The formation flew through regions where up and down had no meaning, past clouds of gas that whispered with the voices of long-dead civilizations, through corridors of space where the stars looked wrong, as if they belonged to a different universe entirely. Ships were lost. The hegemony cruiser Brightwing tried to take a shortcut around a gravity distortion. It never emerged on the other side. The human destroyer Nashville developed engine problems and fell behind. The nebula swallowed it before anyone could help. But the remaining ships held together. 38 vessels from 6 species, flying in perfect formation through impossible space. They followed Soul's pride because they had no choice. Because turning back meant facing the Vorthak fleet. Because going forward might mean salvation. Jae-sung felt the nebula changing around them. The gravity flows were getting stronger but more predictable. The gas clouds were thinning. Somewhere ahead lay the far edge of the nebula and open space. Beyond. "Sir," Hyojin said suddenly, "I am detecting clear space ahead. Range approximately 50,000 kilometers." "And behind us?" "The Vorthak main fleet is still trapped on the other side. But, sir, I am reading something else. Multiple ships in the clear zone ahead." Jae-sung smiled for the first time in hours. "Vorthak supply ships?" "Yes, sir. 12 cargo vessels and 4 escorts. They are not expecting us." The formation burst out of the nebula like missiles fired from a gun. Behind them, the swirling wall of gas and distorted space looked almost beautiful. Ahead lay the enemy supply convoy, caught completely by surprise. The battle was short and brutal. The Vorthak escorts tried to fight, but they were outnumbered 10-1. The cargo ships tried to run, but human and alien ships working together were too fast, too coordinated. In 20 minutes, the supply convoy was destroyed. Fuel, ammunition, and food meant for the Vorthak main fleet now burned in space. Without supplies, the enemy attack would fail. The coalition colonies were safe. As the formation regrouped, Jae-sung opened communications to all ships. "This is Soul's pride to all vessels. We have successfully transited the Kepler Nebula and destroyed the enemy supply line. The impossible has been accomplished through courage, skill, and trust." The responses came flooding in. Voices speaking in a dozen different languages, all saying the same thing. Gratitude, amazement, something that sounded almost like worship. Soul's pride. "This is Captain Kor of Singing Wind," the Alteran commander said. "You have shown us that humans see paths where others see only walls. We are honored to have followed you through the darkness." "Titan's hammer to Soul's pride," added the Centauri captain. "Your tactical genius has saved us all. The coalition will remember this day forever." Jae-sung felt uncomfortable with their praise. He had done what any good commander would do. He had seen a pattern and followed it. The courage had belonged to them, not to him. But as he looked at the tactical display showing 38 ships arranged in perfect formation, he realized that something had changed. These crews would follow him anywhere now. They had passed through the fire together and emerged victorious. What they did not realize yet was that their faith in human tactical thinking was about to reshape the entire war. And Jae Sung himself was about to become something he never wanted to be: a legend. 3 months after the Nebula crossing, Commander Jae Sung Kim could not walk through Coalition Station 7 without causing a crowd. He stepped out of the transport shuttle and immediately heard the whispers starting. "That is him," said a young Altaran in the flowing robes of a temple student. "The one who led them through the impossible path." "I heard he can see the future," added a Centauri dock worker, her forearms gesturing excitedly. "That is how he knew the safe route through the nebula." Jae Sung pulled his cap down low and tried to walk faster. It did no good. Within minutes, a small crowd was following him through the station corridors. Some just wanted to look at him. Others held out data pads, hoping for his signature. A few tried to touch his uniform as if it would bring them luck. Lieutenant Hai-Jin Park appeared. At his side, cutting through the crowd with military efficiency. "Sir, Admiral Song is waiting for you in Conference Room Alpha. She says it is urgent." They escaped into a service corridor that led away from the main areas. Behind them, Jae Sung could hear disappointed voices as the crowd realized he was gone. "This is getting worse every day," he said to Hyojin as they walked. "Yesterday, a hegemony captain asked me to bless his ship before departure. They think I have some kind of magic power." "With respect, sir," Hyojin replied carefully. "What you did in the nebula was extraordinary. Most people cannot understand how you saw that path when everyone else saw only death." "It was mathematics," Jae Sung insisted. "Pattern recognition. Any human tactical officer with enough training could have done the same thing." Hye-jin did not argue, but her expression suggested she disagreed. Like so many others, she had started looking at him differently after the nebula crossing, not as a superior officer, but as something more. They reached Conference Room Alpha. Inside, Fleet Admiral Song Mi-young waited with several other high-ranking officers. Song had been Jae Sung's mentor when he was a junior lieutenant. She was one of the few people who still treated him normally. "Sit down, Jae Sung," she said without ceremony. "We need to talk about your new assignment." The holographic display in the center of the room showed the Tau Ceti system. Red markers indicated heavy Vorthak presence. The enemy had surrounded the system's 3 inhabited worlds, cutting off all supply lines. 40 million colonists are trapped, Admiral Song explained. The Vorthak have built defensive positions that make direct assault impossible. We need someone who can think differently, someone who can find a path where others see only walls. She was using the exact words. From Captain Kor's report about the nebula crossing, Jae Sung realized this was not a coincidence. "You want me to lead another desperate mission," he said. "I want you to save 40 million lives using whatever methods work," Song replied. "Half the volunteer crews have specifically requested to serve under your command. They believe in human tactical doctrine now." Jae Sung looked at the tactical display. The Vorthak positions were strong, but not perfect. There were gaps, weaknesses that could be exploited. His mind began automatically, calculating angles and timing. "What kind of force are we talking about?" he asked. 60 ships from 8 species, Song answered. "The best crews in the coalition. They all followed the reports from your nebula crossing. Some of them have started studying human military history, trying to understand your methods." That was troubling news. Jae Sung's methods were not really methods at all. They were instinct and pattern recognition, developed through years of experience. You could not learn them from books. "I will take the assignment," he decided. "But I want it understood that this is a military operation, not a religious pilgrimage. I am a tactical officer, not a prophet." Song smiled. "Tell that to the crews. I have seen some of their reports. They write about you like you are the second coming of some ancient war god." 2 days later, Jae Sung stood on the bridge of Seoul's Pride as the strike force assembled. Through the view screen, he could see ships from multiple species forming up in neat formations, human destroyers next to Altaran cruisers. Centauri battleships alongside hegemony scouts. But there was something different about these ships. Their crews moved with unusual precision. They responded to orders instantly, without the normal delays caused by translation and cultural differences. It was as if they had been training together for years. "Sir," Hyajin reported from her station, "all ships report ready for departure. Captain Kor sends his regards and says the Singing Wind is honored to serve under your command again." "What about the ships that were not in the nebula formation?" Jae-sung asked. "The ones without experience following human tactics?" Hyejin hesitated. "Some of their commanders have requested permission to observe your methods before committing to battle formations. Captain Veltar specifically asked to maintain independent command authority for his squadron." Jae-sung nodded. He could not blame them for being cautious. Veltar had chosen not to follow him into the nebula, and his ships had suffered heavy losses fighting their way out of the Vorthak trap. But they had survived, and survival meant their approach had some merit too. The journey to Tau Ceti took 6 days. During that time, Jae-sung watched his strike force divide into 2 distinct groups. The ships that had followed him through the nebula worked together like parts of a single machine. They anticipated his orders, executed complex maneuvers without confusion, and showed complete faith in human tactical thinking. The other ships maintained traditional formation discipline but stayed separate. They followed orders correctly, but without the unusual coordination shown by the nebula veterans. Captain Veltar made a point of requesting confirmation for any order that seemed too aggressive or unconventional. On the 5th day, Chief Engineer Dong-hyun Lee visited Jae-sung in his quarters. They had been friends since childhood, growing up together in the same district of Seoul. If anyone could speak honestly to him, it was Dong-hyun. "The crew is starting to worry about you," Dong-hyun said, settling into a chair with a cup of coffee. "You have been spending too much time alone, thinking too much." "I have been trying to figure out how to crack the Tau Ceti defenses without getting half my force killed," Jae-sung replied. "It requires thinking." "That is not what I mean, and you know it." Dong-hyun leaned forward. "You are bothered by how the alien crews look at you, like you are some kind of miracle worker." Jae-sung stared out the window at the stars. "What if they are wrong to trust me so completely? What if the nebula crossing was just luck, and next time their faith gets them killed?" "What if it was not luck?" Dong-hyun countered. "What if you really do see things that others miss? Would that be so terrible?" "It would be terrible if people stopped thinking for themselves and just follow me blindly," Jae-sung said. "Good tactics require good thinking from everyone involved, not blind faith in one person." When they reached Tau Ceti, the situation was as bad as reported. Vorthak battle stations surrounded each planet like metal moons. Enemy patrol fleets moved in predictable patterns, covering every approach route. Any direct assault would face overlapping fields of fire from multiple directions. But Jae-sung saw the pattern hidden in their defenses. The Vorthak were too organized, too systematic. They had planned for every conventional attack, but not for something truly unexpected. "All ships, prepare for combat operations," he announced. "We are going to hit them from 4 directions simultaneously, using planetary gravity to slingshot our attack formations." "Sir," came Captain Veltar's voice over communications. "That approach requires extremely precise timing. If any formation arrives early or late, they will face the entire defensive fleet alone." "The timing will be perfect," Jae-sung replied with complete confidence. "Trust the plan." The battle that followed became legendary throughout the coalition. 4 attack groups swung around different planets, using gravitational acceleration to build up incredible speed. They hit the Vorthak defenses within seconds of each other, fragmenting the enemy response. The key moment came when the Vorthak fleet tried to concentrate against the largest attack group. Jae-sung had anticipated this move. He ordered the other 3 groups to converge on the enemy rear, catching them completely off guard. In 4 hours, the siege of Tau Ceti was broken. 40 million colonists were free. The Vorthak fleet retreated in disorder, leaving behind damaged battle stations and cargo ships full of supplies. But victory came with a cost. 3 ships from Captain Veltar's squadron were lost when they hesitated to follow a rapid course change order. The delay put them out of position when the enemy counterattacked. As the strike force regrouped, Jae-sung realized that the division in his force had become a serious problem. The ships that trusted him completely had performed brilliantly. The ships that questioned his orders had suffered losses. The lesson was obvious to everyone. Complete faith in human tactics meant survival. Doubt meant death. It was exactly the wrong lesson to learn, and Jae-sung knew it would cause terrible problems in the future. The coalition strike force had become 2 different fleets sharing the same space. Commander Jae-sung Kim watched from his bridge as the division grew deeper every day. On the starboard side of their formation, 28 ships moved with perfect coordination. These were the veterans of the Nebula Crossing and the Tau Ceti battle. Their crews had started wearing small pieces of human military insignia alongside their own species' uniforms. They studied human military history during off-duty hours. When Seoul's Pride changed course, they followed within seconds, no questions asked. On the port side, 15 ships maintained traditional formation discipline. These were the Doubters, led by Captain Veltar of the Bright Sword. They followed orders correctly, but always requested confirmation for anything that seemed too risky. Their crews whispered that the other ships had lost their minds to human madness. Lieutenant Hee-jin Park had become the bridge between these 2 worlds. She spent her days translating Jae-sung's rapid-fire tactical instructions into language the alien crews could understand. She spent her nights documenting the growing, philosophical differences in their approaches to warfare. "Sir," she reported during the morning briefing, "Captain Kor has requested permission to repaint Singing Wind in human military colors. He says it would honor the tactical partnership between species." "Denied," Jae-sung said immediately. "They are Alteran, not human. They should be proud of their own heritage." "Captain Veltar has also submitted a formal complaint," Hye-jin continued. "He says the other ships are becoming too dependent on human leadership. He recommends reassigning some of his officers to restore proper military discipline." Jae-sung rubbed his temples. The headaches had been getting worse lately. "What did you tell him?" "I told him that battlefield effectiveness speaks for itself. The ships that follow human tactics have 0 casualties in the last 3 engagements. His squadron has lost 6 ships in the same period." It was true, but Jae-sung knew the statistics did not tell the whole story. The ships that followed him blindly were lucky so far. But luck could change. What would happen when they faced an enemy that had learned to counter human tactics? That question was about to be answered. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting a large Vorthak fleet approaching," Weapons Officer Tae-won reported. "Configuration suggests this is a dedicated hunter group, specifically tasked with destroying our strike force." Jae-sung studied the tactical display. 47 Vorthak ships arranged in a formation he had never seen before. They were flying, spread out, with multiple overlapping sensor nets. No single attack could catch them all by surprise. "They have been studying our methods," he realized. "This formation is designed to counter rapid strike tactics." He opened communications to the entire strike force. "All ships prepare for engagement. The enemy has adapted to our previous strategies. We need to adapt as well." "Seoul's Pride, this is Captain Kor," came the immediate response. "Singing Wind requests permission to lead the forward assault. We have complete faith in human tactical doctrine." "Bright Sword to Seoul's Pride," Captain Veltar added. "My squadron will maintain defensive positions until we understand enemy capabilities. We recommend caution until their new tactics are analyzed." There it was again. Complete faith versus careful analysis. Both approaches had merit, but they could not work together in the same battle. Jae-sung made his decision. All ships, we attack in 3 waves. First wave will probe enemy defenses. Second wave will exploit any weaknesses we find. Third wave will finish them. He assigned the most eager ships to the first wave, knowing they would follow his orders, without hesitation. The more cautious ships went to the second and third waves, where they would have time to see what worked before committing. The battle began badly. The first wave attacked with their usual coordinated precision, but the Vorthak were ready. Their spread formation meant that destroying one ship did not create gaps in their defense. Their overlapping sensors meant that surprise attacks failed. 5. Coalition ships were destroyed in the first 10 minutes. All of them were veterans of the Nebula Crossing, crews that had trusted human tactics completely. "Sir," Hyejin said quietly, "Captain Kor is requesting permission to ram his ship into the enemy flagship. He says it would be an honor to die. Following your orders." "Denied," Jae-sung snapped. "Order all first-wave ships to withdraw immediately." But the damage was done. The most loyal crews had suffered terrible losses, while the cautious ships watched from safety. The lesson was clear to everyone. Blind faith could be just as dangerous as excessive doubt. The second-wave attack went better. Captain Veltar's ships moved carefully, testing enemy responses before committing to full assault. They lost only 1 ship while destroying 3 Vorthak vessels. By the time the third wave attacked, Jae-sung had figured out how to crack the enemy formation. It required precise timing and careful coordination between all remaining ships. Most importantly, it required the eager ships to slow down and the cautious ships to speed up. "All ships, execute attack pattern Omega," he ordered. "Eager squadrons will provide covering fire while cautious squadrons make the primary assault. Everyone must work together or this will fail." For a moment, it seemed like the plan might work. The veteran ships provided excellent covering fire, using their experience to anticipate enemy movements. The cautious ships made a methodical but effective assault on the Vorthak weak points. Then everything went wrong. The enemy flagship began to retreat, drawing the coalition ships into a trap. Jae-sung saw it immediately and ordered an emergency withdrawal. Half his ships followed the order instantly. The other half hesitated, trying to decide if the order made sense. That hesitation cost lives. 3 more ships were destroyed when the Vorthak sprung their trap. 2 belonged to the faithful faction, 1 to the doubters. The battle ended with a coalition victory, but it felt like defeat. Jae-sung had lost 8 ships and over 200 crew members. Worse, he had proven that his force could not work effectively as a unified command. After the battle, the 2 factions held separate memorial services for their dead. The faithful honored their losses as heroic sacrifices in the name of human tactical innovation. The doubters mourned their casualties as victims of reckless leadership. Jae-sung attended both services. At the first, Captain Kor spoke about the honor of serving under human command. At the second, Captain Veltar warned about the dangers of abandoning proven military doctrine. Both were right. Both were wrong. That night, Chief Engineer Dong-hyun found Jae-sung in his quarters, staring at casualty reports. "You cannot blame yourself for every loss," Dong-hyun said. "War means people die. That is not your fault." "It is my fault when they die because they trust me too much," Jae-sung replied. "And it is also my fault when they die because they trust me too little. How do I find the balance?" "Maybe the balance is not yours to find," Dong-hyun suggested. "Maybe it belongs to them, to the crews who have to decide how much faith to place in any single leader." Jae-sung considered this. His friend might be right, but how could he teach his followers to think for themselves when they seemed determined to worship his every decision? The answer would have to wait. Long-range sensors had detected something that changed everything. A massive Vorthak counteroffensive was heading toward Coalition space. It was larger than anything they had faced before, and intelligence reports suggested the enemy had developed new weapons specifically designed to counter human tactical advantages. The coalition would need unity to survive. But Jae Sung's strike force had never been more divided. The greatest test of human leadership was about to begin. The Coalition Council chamber on Kepler Station buzzed with angry voices speaking in 12 different languages. Commander Jae Sung Kim sat in the witness chair, watching the greatest military alliance in galactic history tear itself apart. The human approach to warfare has proven its effectiveness, declared Admiral Crix, her 4 Centauri arms gesturing emphatically. We should grant Commander Kim supreme tactical authority over all coalition forces. Absolutely not, Captain Veltar squawked from across the chamber. One species cannot dictate military policy for 12. We demand a return to traditional command structures and proven defensive strategies. Fleet Admiral Song Mi-young tried to maintain order, but the debate had moved far beyond military tactics. It had become a referendum on humanity's place in the coalition. The believers want to make humans into military gods, shouted a Rigelian delegate. They ignore their own species' tactical wisdom in favor of reckless human aggression. The rationalists want to go back to the old ways that were failing before humans arrived, countered an Alteran representative. They would rather lose slowly than win quickly. Jae Sung listened to the arguments with growing despair. This was exactly what he had feared would happen. His tactical successes had created a cult of personality that was destroying coalition unity. Lieutenant Hye-jin Park sat in the gallery taking notes on everything. She had been documenting the growing division for months, tracking how military disagreements had evolved into political and cultural conflicts. The numbers were stark. 24 ship captains now refused to serve under commanders who did not follow human tactical doctrine. 31 captains had formally requested transfers away from any unit that practiced human-style warfare. Several species were threatening to withdraw from the coalition entirely if their concerns were not addressed. Commander Kim, Admiral Song called, the Council would like to hear your perspective on these developments. Jae Sung stood up slowly. Every eye in the chamber focused on him. Some looked at him with worship, others with suspicion, most with confusion. Honorable delegates, he began, I am a tactical officer, not a political leader. My job is to win battles and protect coalition, worlds, nothing more. But your methods have changed how warfare is conducted, pressed the hegemony representative. Should we not adopt the most effective approaches? My methods work for humans because they match human psychology, Jae Sung replied carefully. Pattern, recognition, rapid adaptation, controlled aggression. These are natural human traits. Other species have different strengths that can be equally effective. Then why do ships following human tactics suffer fewer casualties? Demanded Admiral Crix. It was the question Jae Sung had been dreading, because the honest answer would make everything worse. Because, he said quietly, the ships that follow me completely have learned to think like humans in combat. They react faster, adapt quicker, and coordinate better. But this comes at a cost. They have become dependent on human leadership and lost confidence in their own tactical traditions. The chamber erupted in angry voices. The believers accused him of false modesty. The rationalists claimed he had finally admitted to undermining other species' military capabilities. Order, Admiral Song shouted. Commander Kim, continue your assessment. The ships that question my orders suffer more casualties because they hesitate at crucial moments, Jae Sung continued. Not because their caution is wrong, but because mixing 2 different tactical philosophies in the same battle creates confusion and delay. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that ranged from devoted to hostile. The real problem is not human tactics or alien tactics. The real problem is that we are trying to force unity instead of allowing cooperation. Each species has valuable military knowledge. We should be learning from each other, not copying each other. But his words fell on deaf ears. The political momentum was too strong. the divisions too deep. The council broke up into angry factions, each convinced they knew the right path forward. That evening, Jae-sung walked through the observation deck of Kepler Station. Through the massive windows, he could see the coalition fleet anchored in defensive positions. Even from a distance, he could identify which ships belonged to which faction by their formation patterns. The believers had adopted tight, aggressive formations that maximized rapid response capabilities. The rationalists maintained traditional, dispersed deployments that emphasized defensive strength. They looked like two different fleets that happened to be sharing the same space. Chief Engineer Dong-hyun found him there, staring out at the divided fleet. "The long-range scouts came back with bad news," Dong-hyun reported. "The Vorthak counteroffensive is bigger than we thought. Over 300 ships, including some new heavy cruiser class we have never seen before." "How long until they arrive?" Jae-sung asked. 6 days, maybe 7 if they stop to reduce the outer defense stations. Jae-sung nodded grimly. The coalition had perhaps 160 ships available for defense. Good odds under normal circumstances, but these were not normal circumstances. "Intelligence reports suggest the Vorthak have been studying our recent battles," Dong-hyun continued. "They have developed tactics specifically designed to counter human command methods, decentralized formations, redundant command structures, adaptive response protocols." "They learned from our successes," Jae-sung realized. "Just like we learned from theirs." The irony was bitter. The Vorthak had solved the human tactical problem by becoming more like the traditional coalition forces. Careful, methodical, resistant to surprise attacks. Meanwhile, the coalition had fractured into factions that could barely cooperate with each other, let alone present a unified defense. "There is something else," Dong-hyun said quietly. "Both factions have been sending private messages to Earth Command. The believers want official support for making you Supreme Coalition Commander. The rationalists want Earth to recall you and all human tactical advisors." Jae-sung felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "What did Earth Command say?" "They are sending a response fleet with orders to evaluate the situation. Admiral Chen is in command." Admiral Chen was a political officer, skilled at managing complex diplomatic situations. His arrival meant Earth was taking the crisis seriously, but it also meant that Jae-sung's actions were now being judged not just as military decisions, but as representatives of humanity's role in galactic affairs. Over the next 3 days, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Believer faction began conducting independent training exercises, practicing human-style tactics without coordination with other coalition units. The Rationalist faction responded by developing defensive plans that assumed human forces could not be relied upon. Captain Veltar formally requested permission to withdraw his ships from any battle involving human tactical command. Captain Kor sent a message declaring that Alteran forces would follow human leadership regardless of official orders. The breaking point came when both factions began sending recruitment messages to uncommitted ships, trying to convince them to choose sides. Admiral Song called an emergency meeting with Jae-sung in her private office. "This cannot continue," she said bluntly. "We are facing the largest enemy offensive in coalition history, and our fleet is too busy fighting itself to prepare proper defenses." "What do you want me to do?" Jae-sung asked. "Both sides are using my name to justify their positions. If I support one faction, the other will revolt. If I try to stay neutral, both will claim I am betraying them." Song poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him. For a moment, she looked like the mentor who had guided his early career, not the fleet admiral responsible for galactic defense. "You could resign," she suggested quietly. "Remove yourself from the equation entirely. Let the factions figure out how to work together without you as a focal point." Jae-sung had considered this option many times. It would certainly solve the immediate political crisis, but it would also abandon the crews who had trusted him, leaving them without leadership when they needed it most. "The Vorthak fleet will arrive in 3 days," he said. "If I resign now, the coalition defense will be chaos. Too many crews have become dependent on human tactical methods. They will not fight effectively under traditional command." And if you stay? If I stay, we fight a civil war and an alien invasion at the same time. Song nodded slowly. Then we need a third option, something that neither faction expects. Jae-sung stared out the window at the divided fleet. Somewhere in that chaos of ships and conflicting loyalties, there had to be a path forward, a way to unite human adaptability with alien strength without destroying either. The answer came to him suddenly, like a pattern emerging from static. I know what to do, he said, but it will require both factions to trust me one more time, and it will require me to give up everything they think I represent. The coalition fleet hung in space like a broken necklace, scattered and divided. Commander Jae-sung Kim stood before the largest assembly of ship captains in galactic history, knowing that the next 10 minutes would determine the fate of billions of lives. Captains of the coalition, he began, his voice carrying across the communication channels to 160 ships. In 2 hours, the Vorthak fleet will arrive. They outnumber us 2-1. They have studied our tactics and developed counters for our strategies. By every rational calculation, we cannot win this battle. Murmurs rippled through the assembled crews. Some were voices of fear, others of determination. Captain Veltar's image flickered on the communication screen, his bird-like features tense with worry. Captain Kor sat perfectly still, waiting for wisdom from the human he had followed through impossible dangers. The believers among you want me to lead a charge using human tactics, Jae-sung continued. The rationalists want me to step aside and let traditional coalition strategy take command. Both approaches will fail. This caused an uproar. Angry voices filled the communication channels. Admiral Crix demanded an explanation. Several Alteran captains accused him of losing faith in human methods. Jae-sung waited for the noise to die down. Then he activated the tactical display that showed his battle plan to every ship simultaneously. We will do something that has never been attempted before, he announced. We will fight as one fleet using the best tactical knowledge of all species. Human adaptability will provide rapid response to changing conditions. Centauri coordination will maintain formation integrity. Hegemony analysis will identify enemy weak points. Alteran intuition will guide our timing. The display showed ship formations that mixed species according to their strengths rather than their loyalties. Human destroyers paired with Centauri heavy cruisers for maximum flexibility. Hegemony scouts working with Alteran meditation ships for enhanced sensor capability. This plan requires perfect trust, Jae-sung explained. Not trust in me, but trust in each other. Every species, every crew, every individual must believe that their allies will do their part. Captain Veltar spoke first. Commander Kim, this formation abandons proven defensive doctrine. You are asking us to risk everything on an untested theory. Captain Kor disagrees, came the Alteran's musical voice. He says human tactical wisdom has never led us wrong. We should follow Commander Kim wherever he leads. Both of you are missing the point, Jae-sung interrupted. I am not asking you to follow me. I am asking you to follow each other. He highlighted specific ship pairings on the tactical display. Captain Veltar, your analytical skills will be crucial for timing the main assault. Captain Kor, your intuitive understanding of enemy psychology will guide our feints and diversions. Admiral Crix, your species' coordination abilities will keep our formations intact under pressure. For the first time since the crisis began, the communication channels fell silent. Captains who had been arguing for months suddenly realized what Jae-sung was proposing. You want us to command ourselves, Admiral Crix said slowly, using our own strengths instead of copying human methods. Exactly. I will coordinate overall strategy, but tactical execution belongs to each species doing what they do best. The Vorthak have prepared for human tactics and traditional coalition tactics. They have not prepared for something entirely new. Lieutenant Heejin Park, monitoring from Seoul's Pride, watched the captains' faces on her screen. She could see the moment when understanding dawned. These were not stupid beings. They were accomplished military officers who had allowed political division to cloud their judgment. "The question is," Jae-sung continued, "can you trust each other enough to make this work? Can believers and rationalists fight side by side? Can 12 species coordinate without a single supreme commander telling them every move to make?" The debate that followed was different from previous arguments. Instead of attacking each other's philosophies, captains began discussing practical coordination problems. How would Centauri ships communicate tactical changes to hegemony scouts? How would human destroyers integrate with Alteran cruiser formations? Chief Engineer Dong-hyun, watching from the Soul's Pride engineering deck, smiled for the first time in weeks. His old friend had found a way to turn the fleet's greatest weakness into its greatest strength. When the Vorthak fleet arrived, they found something unexpected waiting for them. Instead of the divided, argumentative coalition they had been studying, they faced a unified force that fought unlike anything in their tactical databases. The battle began with traditional hegemony analysis, identifying weak points in the enemy formation. But instead of following up with predictable assault patterns, the coalition response came from multiple directions simultaneously. Human-guided rapid strikes hit targets identified by hegemony intelligence. Centauri coordination kept. The attacks synchronized while Alteran intuition guided the timing. The Vorthak tried to adapt, but every time they countered one tactical approach, another species' methods caught them off guard. They had prepared for human unpredictability or alien methodical planning. They could not handle both working together. The turning point came when Captain Veltar identified a critical weakness in the enemy flagship's defensive grid. Instead of arguing about the best approach, he immediately coordinated with Captain Kor's intuitive strike timing and Admiral Crix's formation coordination. The combined attack succeeded brilliantly. The Vorthak flagship was crippled, and their fleet coordination collapsed. But victory came with a price that nobody expected. In the heat of battle, Soul's Pride took heavy damage while protecting a damaged Alteran ship. Jae-sung was badly injured when the bridge took a direct hit. As medical teams worked to save him, the coalition fleet continued fighting using the integrated tactics he had taught them. They no longer needed a single commander making all the decisions. Each species contributed their strengths while trusting their allies to do the same. The Vorthak retreat was complete. Their largest offensive had been broken by coalition forces fighting as true partners rather than subordinates following a human prophet. 3 days later, Jae-sung woke up in the medical bay to find Admiral Song waiting beside his bed. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I got hit by a battleship," he replied weakly. "How did the battle end?" "Total victory. The Vorthak are retreating to their home systems. More importantly, the integrated tactical doctrine you created is being adopted fleet-wide. Ships that were ready to kill each other last week are now requesting permanent partnership assignments." Jae-sung nodded carefully, mindful of his bandaged head. "What about the factions? The believers and rationalists?" Song smiled. "They do not exist anymore. Oh, some captains still prefer human-style tactics, and others favor traditional approaches, but they are working together now instead of fighting each other." Through the medical bay window, Jae-sung could see ships from multiple species flying in mixed formations, human destroyers escorted by Centauri cruisers, hegemony scouts paired with Alteran meditation ships, each pairing chosen for tactical effectiveness rather than political alignment. "There is one more thing," Song added. "The Coalition Council has offered you promotion to Fleet Admiral with supreme tactical authority over all forces." "I decline," Jae-sung said without hesitation. "I thought you might. They also offered you command of the new Tactical Integration Institute. You would train mixed-species crews in cooperative warfare methods. That was more interesting. Teaching others to find their own strengths instead of following his example. Helping create something new rather than being worshipped as a prophet." "I accept," he decided. "But I want Captain Veltar and Captain Kor as my co-directors." The Institute. should be led by representatives of different tactical philosophies working together. Song raised an eyebrow. The former leader of the rationalists and the most devoted believer? That could be interesting. It will be perfect, Jae-sung replied. Veltar's analytical approach will balance Core's intuitive methods. Students will learn that there is no single right way to fight, only different strengths that can work together. 2 weeks later, Jae-sung stood in the observation lounge of the new Tactical Integration Institute, watching the first class of mixed-species officers practice coordination exercises. Humans worked alongside Centauri. Hegemony analysts partnered with Alteran mystics, and former enemies learned to trust each other's unique abilities. Lieutenant Hya-Jin Park, now promoted to commander, joined him at the window. She carried a datapad filled with reports from across Coalition space. The integration is working better than anyone expected, she reported. Fleet effectiveness is up 30% across all sectors. More importantly, casualty rates are down by half. When crews trust each other completely, they protect each other better. Jae-sung nodded, watching a young human lieutenant explain rapid response tactics to a group of Centauri cadets. Nearby, a hegemony instructor demonstrated analytical methods to eager Alteran students. What about the political situation? He asked. Stable for the first time in years. The species councils are still arguing about trade policies and territorial boundaries, but nobody questions military cooperation anymore. The success speaks for itself. Through the window, Jae-sung could see ships from the Institute's training fleet conducting joint exercises. Each ship flew the colors of its home species, but they moved together like parts of a single organism. Human unpredictability guided by alien wisdom, alien strength enhanced by human adaptability. Sir, Hya-Jin continued, I have been thinking about what you said during the final battle, about trust belonging to the crews rather than to individual leaders. What about it? You gave up being a prophet to become something better, a teacher, who shows others how to find their own strength. Jae-sung smiled, remembering his conversation with Dong-hyun months ago. His friend had been right. The balance had never been his to find. It belonged to the crews, the species, the individuals, who chose to work together despite their differences. The real victory was not defeating the Vorthak, he realized. It was proving that different species can become stronger together without losing what makes them unique. Outside, the training exercises continued. Ships from 12 species flying, in formations that would have been impossible before the crisis, each crew contributing their strengths while trusting their partners to do the same. Captain Veltar appeared at the observation window, his analytical mind already planning improvements to the training curriculum. Captain Core drifted up beside him, his intuitive understanding helping interpret the emotional dynamics between species. The first graduating class will be ready for deployment next month, Veltar reported with his characteristic precision. Integration efficiency is exceeding all projected parameters. More than that, Core added with musical satisfaction, they trust each other completely. Not because they follow the same doctrine, but because they understand each other's strengths. Jae-sung looked at his two co-directors, former enemies who had become partners. If a rationalist and a believer could work together this effectively, there was hope for the entire galaxy. What is our next project? He asked. The Vorthak have requested a ceasefire, Veltar replied. They want to discuss joining the coalition. Their military leaders are impressed by our integrated tactics, Core explained. They believe their species' strengths could contribute to the alliance. Jae-sung considered this development. Former enemies becoming allies, adding their knowledge to the growing synthesis of tactical approaches. It was exactly what the coalition was supposed to be about. Set up the negotiations, he decided. But make sure all species are represented equally. No single tactical philosophy should dominate the discussion. As his co-directors left to arrange the meeting, Jae-sung remained at the window, The training exercises were ending, ships returning to dock in perfect formation. Each crew had learned something new about cooperation, about trusting abilities different from their own. Chief Engineer Dong-hyun found him there as the artificial. Sunset began to paint the station walls golden. "Any regrets?" his old friend asked. Jae-sung thought about the question seriously. He had given up the worship of thousands, the authority to command entire fleets, the status of being humanity's greatest military hero. In return, he had gained something far more valuable, the knowledge that cooperation could create strength beyond anything any single species could achieve alone. "No regrets," he said finally. "This is better than being a prophet. This is being part of something that will outlast any individual leader." Outside, the stars shone down on a galaxy where former enemies worked together, where different species had learned to trust each other's unique gifts, where the greatest victories came not from following one leader, but from believing in what they could accomplish together. The leap of faith had ended. The real journey was just beginning.